Good morning and welcome to Morning Rave, Ronke Posh.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Very much for joining us. A very important day, especially for the likes of you who have invested so much in education, looking at the International Day for Education. But even though, yes, this year's owned by the United Nations has been dedicated to women or the girl child in Afghanistan, if you look at Nigeria's own case, I mean, out of school children, 20 million, and still counting. The education budget for education is still at the lowest, not at what the standard being put up there by the United Nations. This is 2023. What should be our expectation? Because we do know that a new government is coming in, and what would we like to see from the next administration concerning education?
All right, thank you. It will be great for us to prioritize education, for the government to prioritize education, for those that are even literate to prioritize education, because one person or a couple of people in government are not going to be able to do that job. It's a big job, and we need that because we're in a crisis situation in Nigeria. We need to get our youth working. We need unemployment levels to go down. We need our children, our youth to be working so that we can build our country again. We need to rebuild our country. We have too many of our youth on the streets. We have antisocial behavior on the rise. We have gun violence. We have so many things happening. And I do believe that prioritizing education, allocating more funds to education is going to definitely alleviate a lot of the problems and the challenges we have as a nation, even including the mass relocation of many of our youth, and even those that are not necessarily youth leaving the country, the japa, as they say. I believe that when we have educated people in the country, skilled labor, these challenges will begin to reduce in Nigeria.
Okay, very brilliant submission there. But as someone in that sector, do you think that it is enough that the government invests more, increase whatever budget it has for education? What is the private sector doing to ensure that we have more children, more out-of-school children get back in the schools?
I think to say that the private sector are actually doing or have done and have been doing over the years Nigeria a lot of favor, because you can imagine what the educational system would be like now if we didn't have many private schools in Nigeria. If you look at many public schools in Nigeria at the moment, they do not have a lot of facilities. Some children don't even have roofs over their heads. They don't have chairs to sit down. They don't have just the basic facilities, books, boards, even safety, toilets. Many of those public schools do not have. We must not be deceived by the few that are being shown to us. We're talking about the majority that are not serving our youth, are not serving the country. So you find that a lot of public schools, as much as they can, a lot of private school owners, as much as they can, they do support public school children. They do sponsor them. They do support some of these NGOs as much as they can. But we cannot get the private schools and the private individuals to do that work alone. We need to all collectively, and the government needs to take responsibility to ensure that our youth are educated.
And there's this argument about who should, take more responsibility when it comes to education in the country. Some have said the federal government can't bear the burden so much. Of course, in the past, just last year, we saw how students stayed at home for 8 months due to the ASU strike. Now, this time around, a lot of people are, school of thoughts are saying that states should be the ones having the brunt of it. I mean, major stake in educating the citizens rather than the federal government. Would you agree with that?
You see, what I'll say now is all hands on deck. We should stop passing responsibility from one person to the other. We should stop saying it's the responsibility of X, Y, or Z. We are in a crisis situation. Right now, as many people, anyone who can, should do what they can to ensure that our youth are educated. Be it state, be it private, be it public, call it whatever you want, but we need to get our children in schools. The federal government, they are responsible. The state government, they are all responsible. They're all leadership in one capacity or the other. Think about schools around the world. A lot of people are claiming to japa or leave the country because they want free education for their children. But there's no free education anywhere because there are taxpayers that are funding the education in the countries that these people are going. So at the end of the day, it is still the government, be it states, be it federal, that needs to ensure that the funds are located to the right places and the funds are used to do the right things when it comes to education. We've heard all sorts of stories over the years about the funds that come into the educational sector, the funds that come to schools. We've heard all sorts of stories over the years. I think enough is enough, and we need to begin to prioritize and ensure that we do our best for our children, because education is that tool for development. It's a fundamental human right for our children. It's going to ensure that it improves the mindset of the average Nigerian child. It's important for good governance and so many, many, many things. So right now, I don't think we should be passing the baton from one person to the other, but I'll say all hands on deck.
Okay, so speaking about prioritizing education and not shifting blames now, you have said that the private sector is doing their best to ensure that they at least augment what the federal government is doing. But we also know that there's a problem of poverty, and a lot of people do not have the facility or probably the resources to put their children in private schools, as it were, because we have a lot of schools that we call private that are not even, they are not even good enough compared to the public schools. How is this affecting us? Because money is very important in getting the best of education, even in the JAPA system you're talking about. How is poverty affecting education in Nigeria?
I mean, if a child cannot eat, think about it. How can they learn? A child, the basic things that a child needs, food, clothing, and shelter. If a child has not eaten, if a child does not have a roof over the head or even clothes to wear, I don't believe that that child is going to be in a good frame of mind to learn anything that any teacher wants to teach. So it's very important that we ensure that our children have the basic fundamental human rights, and so that they can actually learn. Because learning is not just a process that occurs by itself. Learning is state dependent, and the mindset of the child and the basic fundamental rights, albeit education is one of them, but there are other factors like food. We see children that haven't eaten, we see children roaming about the streets, we see children hawking, we see children doing nothing on the streets. Those children need, and their parents, they need all the help that they can get to ensure that those children are learning. A lot of parents will also send their children to go and fend for the family before they send them to school, because they know that they have those needs in the home. So all these things, all these factors are very important. They're very critical to ensure that learning occurs and our children are able to learn.
Okay, before we let you go, we do know that the amount being apportioned from the budget usually is less than 15%, to education, going forward, because already we have a 2023 budget, but definitely we'll have a 2024 budget with a different administration. What would be your recommendation, the amount, the percentage that should go to education in Nigeria at this stage?
Well, I'm not an analyst, so I don't a financial analyst or an economics, so I won't necessarily put a figure on that, because I know that our challenge in Nigeria is not the challenge of the of every nation. It's not the typical challenge that you would find in a developing country, because I don't want to say Nigeria is a developing country. To a large extent, we're an underdeveloped country. We don't want to think about the Lagos and the Abujas alone. We want to think about all the other states around the world, so around the country. So what I'll say is that definitely 15% is not enough. And if something is important, we have to prioritize it. Prioritizing education means that we're allocating significantly more funds, significantly more than 15% to the educational sector.
Right. Thank you very much, Ronke Posh, for joining us. Talking about the International Day for Education. We appreciate your contribution on Rave this morning.